Hello, welcome to my weekly video, and this week I thought I would talk about the Vedic Cosmology and just have a look at this book here, which is by Richard.L.Thompson. It's called Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy. So thought we could have a look at the chapters in that and maybe do a reading and talk about other stuff like the Vedic Planetarium and just the context of that in relation to things like Shamanic Journeying and also with reference to Emanuel Swedenborg and the journeys that he did and how that relates to the Vedic Cosmology. So just start by doing some chanting. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadada Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so there's a few good videos on YouTube about the Vedic Cosmology, and the best one is the one called what is it called? The older one. I think it's made in the 80s. That is I think that's a better sort of presentation of the Vedic cosmology. If you look at that one. Also, there's a really good lecture by this guy, the guy that wrote this book, Richard.L.Thompson, and I'm not sure what you would search to find that. I think if you just put Vedic Cosmology, you'll probably find it, the Richard Thompson one, and there's quite a good lecture from that as well. I've pretty much just got my information from those. I still haven't read this book, so I mean, that's where you can see that's coming from. I guess I'm just bringing the cosmography or cosmology forward into discussion as it's what I've been looking at lately, and it's also relevant in terms of the Vedic Planetarium that is under construction. If you haven't heard of that, then you search Vedic Planetarium as well, because that's a massive temple that's being built with this cosmology in it, and that's under construction, and it's going to be finished like maybe next year or something like that. So yeah, it's pretty massive. So I guess just have a look at some some of the contents of this and just read through the title headings. Basically, the cosmology is quite different in the given from the Vedic conception. It's kind of it's a geocentric model. So it's, rather than taking the sun as the point of where the cosmology is based from, it's taken from our perspective, which is like geocentric is actually, it makes more sense as a model spiritually because we are on the earth. So because we're on the earth, it makes sense to have a model of the cosmos which is taken from our perspective, looking out from the earth at the sun and moon. I think, for instance, like say in this model, the sun is orbiting around the earth, and the other planets are orbiting around the sun as the sun goes around the earth. So that's a geocentric model. If you think about relativity, it's just like it's picked that point, it's picked the earth as the point instead of the sun. And what you get if you take the geocentric model and look at the sun orbiting around the earth with the other planets orbiting around the sun, it's more like a spirograph kind of thing. So you get like the earth is in the middle, and then the sun's going around the earth, and then the other planets are going around the sun. So you get these kind of spirals like that go around the model, which is used in astrology and stuff like that. And yeah, so you can get patterns. That's interesting also from, say, a sacred geometrical kind of viewpoint, or looking at the different patterns that are formed as like harmonics, looking at the harmonics of different planets and stuff like that. You can view it like that. But the thing about the Vedic cosmology that's presented is that it presents multiple maps in one map. So it has a map. The video explains it's done in like clusters of information, and if you take one piece of information and ignore the rest, then you get a specific world view that map is representing. And if you take another piece of information, then you get a different. So the cosmology represents is it 4 or 5 different models? I think 5 different models. And like one of them, there's always a mountain is taken as one of the major points. There's one mountain which is taken, and various cultures around the world all have their sacred mountain. Like, say, for instance, in Jerusalem, I think it's Mount Zion, and also other civilizations, like say the Incan civilization, maybe, or the Mayan, like they had their sacred mountain, and in India it's Mount Meru. And I'm actually interested to look into Māori mythology. I'm in New Zealand, and find out if there's any sacred mountains in New Zealand, as to uncover what the relevant cosmology is, because it can be taken relative to your country. For instance, one aspect of the cosmology that's described by the map is a map of the continent of India. It covers the main area of India, and obviously that aspect of the cosmology is specific to the Indian continent itself. Other aspects of the cosmology are across the board. All the different cultures are all representing the same thing, which is there's certain features of it, such as the mountain. There's like the main mountain, and there's a tree. There's like a tree that's represented, which in shamanism would be the shaman's tree. So you have a tree, and you also have these 4 rivers that come out of the mountain. There's these 4 rivers that run east, west, north and south, and if you study the works of Swedenborg, you'll see that everything in his journeys, when he describes heaven, everything is given in a description of north, east, south, and west. That different phenomenon within that journey through the spiritual realm that he's going through is described. For instance, a group of people suddenly appeared in the east, and then coming down from above, from the vertical direction, because vertical direction is given as well. Some angels appeared from above, and then we heard a dark noise coming from below, from the hells or something like that. So there's this orientation which is used, and that's really interesting in relation to these four rivers, which in Christian cosmology, that's the Garden of Eden, and those four rivers that come out of the Garden of Eden, and obviously you have the tree of life in there. In relation to Mount Meru, there's the other mountains, the other rivers that are in there. There's also other aspects that are represented, like on the ceiling of the Mount Meru is the realm of the demigods, and so there's different cities where the demigods dwell, and then further than that there's goes into there's also a model of the Earth. There's a model of the Earth globe given by the cosmology, and also a model of our universe. And our universe is taken to be like a localized universe. It's basically the solar system, but how it's represented, it includes aspects of knowledge about time and space. If you study Swedenborg's writings, you'll one of the major points that he makes at the beginning is that in order to read his writings, you need to remove time and space from your thinking. So, in other words, there's an ability of a human being, if they so develop their consciousness in that direction, to actually go outside of time and space within their own thinking. And I guess this sort of happens by the mercy of the Lord, especially in bhakti or something like that. But relevant to that is seeing the cosmology of a localized universe surrounded by the shells of the different elements, because you have to go through the elements you have to transcend the elements to actually get outside time and space. So the cosmology is represented with everything in a sphere, and it kind of has this amniotic fluid at the bottom, and it's got the heavenly planets at the top, and you've got upper heavenly planets going up to the top of the universe, and there's the underworld at the bottom of the universe, and then there's the hells. And some of the underworld is not like in shamanism. It's described the underworld is not necessarily a bad place. Like shamans do journeys to the underworld, and they do different things there. Like I've had in a spiritual emergence experience, I went to a place that was in like a crystal kingdom that was going in the down direction as opposed to the up direction. So so there's the underworld that comes down the bottom, and then the heavenly planets going up the top, and that's all within a shell that is described has these different elements around the shell, and I think it also has false ego in there, which if you understand from a yogi's perspective, one way is that yogis transcend their own body as they conquer each of the elements in each set. So they go through all the elements, and once they've conquered the elements, that is to have conquered their mind. And in Bhakti Yoga it works a little bit differently. It's just well, that's sort of a side subject, but basically the thing is, outside of this universe which is created, that is where they situate the spiritual world. But from within that universe, if you're thinking about time and space, you're only going to get inside that universe, if you understand what I mean. You can't think from time and space about the spiritual world, which is described as being outside that universe, because the realm of time is within that universe, so time is within that universe. So in other words, you can't think of the spiritual world in relation to time and space. So that has to be taken into account in order to understand the cosmology and how it is actually a plausible model. So that's with the planets. There's the planets and stuff. So you've got a map of India, or a map of the local country, a map of the Earth globe, and then a map of the planets in the solar system, and then a map of which is taken to be a universe, and then a map of the realm of the demigods, and then finally there is a map of the chakra system itself as described. And that's what's meant by the different lokas that go up the cosmology. You have realms like Petra Loka or Brahma Loka, and it goes all the way up to Goloka Vrindavan, which is, if you look at the chakra system, these lokas are situated in the human body. Going up to Krishna's abode is going through that, the rising of the Kundalini energy into that crown chakra, and so that's the most internal way that the cosmology is represented. But kind of the beauty of it is that within the Bhagavatam, it describes all of those different things all within one model. So it's just one model that represents all those different aspects within it. So the beauty of the cosmology is that it is it's symmetrical, and it's centered on something in which all members of the society can relate to that central figure, to that central mountain or whatever it is, and those that are doing inner journeying and stuff can also relate to that same cosmology in relation to things like shamanic journeying to other realms, and also of the ascension of the soul, or the ascension of the consciousness into God realization. So we'll have a look at, this is the book. I wanted to do something, just have a read from this book, and so what's something interesting to look at? So Bhumandala, you can look at Bhumandala. I'll just read from that. That's what the main central area of the cosmology is called. It's called Bhumandala, or Middle Earth is another name, which I thought was quite funny in relation to Lord of the Rings. You've got Middle Earth in Lord of the Rings as well. So so that's on page 47. So, Vedic Cosmology. Sukadev Goswami said, "My dear king, there is no limit to the expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's material energy. This material world is a transformation of the material qualities, yet no one could possibly explain it perfectly, even in a lifetime as long as that of Brahma. In this chapter we will describe the structure of this universe, or Brahmanda, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Our aim is to show the relation between the Vedic picture of the universe and the world of our experience. In doing this, we will draw information from the following sources: the writings of Srila Prabhupada, including his translation with commentary of the Srimad Bhagavatam, other writings in the Vedic tradition, including the Surya Siddhanta and the modern Western science. Our strategy is to present the simplest possible world picture that will harmonize 1 and 3, given the assumption that the Bhagavatam gives a direct and valid account of this universe. In doing so, we will try as far as possible to avoid introducing speculative hypotheses. This means that we will often have to make statements of the form A corresponds to B without spelling out the exact nature of the correspondence. In some cases, we will try to show the plausibility of the correspondence by offering a speculative explanation of how it might come about. However, all explanations of this kind should be regarded as tentative and subject to correction in the future. Okay. Bhumandala, or Middle Earth. The Vedic literature describes the material cosmos as an unlimited ocean situated within a small part of the unlimited spiritual world. Within this ocean there are innumerable universes, or Brahmandas, which can be compared to spherical bubbles of foam grouped in clusters. Each of these universal globes consists of a series of spherical coverings and an inner inhabited portion. Within the inner region of the Brahmanda, the most striking feature is Bhumandala, or the earthly planetary system. Bhumandala is described in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam as a flat disk with a diameter of 500 million yojanas, or 4 billion miles. The surface of this disk is marked with a series of ring-shaped oceans and islands surrounded by a central island called Jambudweep. The total surface area of our familiar Earth planet is some 197 million square miles, and according to modern information, the total surface area of the Sun is about 2.4 million square miles. In contrast, the total area of Bhumandala comes to about 12.6 billion square miles. In Srimad Bhagavatam 2.5.40p, Srila Prabhupada refers to this as the area of the universe, and it seems that Bhumandala is indeed one of the most significant and frequently mentioned features in the Vedic account of the universe. Its size is on the scale of the solar system as a whole, as conceived in modern Western astronomy. The 5th canto gives specific figures for the size, shape, and position of many of the geographical structures of Bhumandala. The most striking characteristic of these features is that although their description employs names for familiar features of earthly geography, such as mountains, oceans, and islands, they are all on the same cosmic scale as Bhumandala itself. Thus, the smallest mountains on Bhumandala mentioned in the Bhagavatam are 2,000 yojanas, or 16,000 miles high. Many mountains are 80,000 miles or even 672,000 miles high. In contrast, the diameter of the Earth is about 8,000 miles, and Mount Everest, the highest known mountain, extends about 5.5 miles above sea level. References to such immense sizes are not limited to the 5th canto. For example, Srimad Bhagavatam 4.6.32 gives a description of Lord Shiva meditating underneath a banyan tree 8,000 miles in height and 800 miles in height and 600 miles in breadth. In Srimad Bhagavatam 8.2.1 we read that Trikuta mountain, where the elephant Gajendra achieved liberation, is 80,000 miles in length and breadth. This mountain is situated in the Ocean of Milk, one of the geographical features of Bhumandala. In Srimad Bhagavatam 8.7.9, it is pointed out that when Kurma, the tortoise incarnation of Lord Vishnu, was supporting Mandara mountain during the churning of the Milk Ocean, his back extended for 800,000 miles, Laksha Yojana, like a large island. Finally, the Matsya avatar, Lord Vishnu's fish incarnation, expanded from an initial small size to a final length of 8 million miles. Modern scholars tend to reject dimensions such as these as ludicrous exaggerations made by poets who were completely devoid of scientific knowledge. However, even common men in primitive societies can tell that the earthly mountains of our experience have heights of thousands of feet rather than thousands of miles. The highly rational philosophical discussions in the Bhagavad Gita indicate that it was not written by some kind of mad fanatic who was devoid of common sense. We suggest, therefore, that the descriptions in the Bhagavad Gita of gigantic sizes refer to an actually existing world that is built on the scale of the solar system and that contains features built on a similar scale. We will assume that this is the case, and later on we will consider the relation might be between this world and the earth of our experience. For the present, we will give a brief overview of the most significant features of Bhumandala. We will do this with the aid of a series of computer-generated illustrations that portray the features of Bhumandala as they would appear to an observer approaching Bhumandala from a great distance. So, if you watch that video on Vedic Cosmology, then you can see some diagrams of what Bhumandala looks like. I can show you the pictures from here, but this is the one with the mountains. It looks odd, but what it's actually describing is quite complex. It's kind of it's sort of literal and not. It kind of is literal to an extent. Understanding those kind of sizes, for instance, like the day of Brahma is so many million years or whatever, and the idea is that these demigods, like Brahma and stuff, are actually gigantic compared to the size of a human being, that a human being is actually quite small, and then the demigods have larger bodies. The closest thing in Swedenborg to describe like demigods with large bodies would be when he describes spiritual societies. He describes that different spiritual societies appear as one being, as one big being, and they're actually made up of individuals within that spiritual society. So different spiritual societies appear as different beings on a larger scale. So whether that is some kind of description of what a demigod sort of is, I'm not sure. It matches up in some sense, but also not in the sense that one person can be a demigod, which is a little bit confusing in relation to the sizes. Yeah, there's also, I don't know if I'll read something from Vertical Direction. There's lots of good stuff in this book. It's got some stuff on flying saucers. Projection of Bhumandala on the sky. Yeah, basically, if you read Emanuel Swedenborg's writing, here we go, Higher Dimensional Travel in the Vertical Direction, 92. Okay. One aspect of our interpretation of the planetary distances in Table 8 is that the vertical dimension in Vedic cosmology is more than just a third coordinate axis, as understood in ordinary geometry. It also involves a higher dimensional aspect that goes beyond the range of our senses. We can obtain one indication of this by considering the height dimension that one can reach within this universe by travelling in this vertical direction. This is the planetary system called Satyaloka, which is the abode of Brahma, the secondary creator of the universe. According to the Bhagavatam, Satyaloka is located near the top of the universal globe, in the direction of the north celestial pole. Since the Earth is located near the center of this globe, this means that Satyaloka is about 2 billion miles from the Earth. A spaceship traveling at 500 miles per hour, a moderate speed for a jet plane, could cover 2 billion miles in 457 years, and thus it would seem that it might be feasible for human beings to reach such a logo using mechanical technology. Yet in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.1.21 we find the remarkable statement that such a loga is situated many millions and billions of years away. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.9.29 states that even attempting to reach the highest planet will take millions of years at a speed of millions of miles per hour. And Srimad Bhagavatam 2.2.23 completely rules out the possibility of going beyond Swargaloka or Janaloka by mechanical or materialistic activities, either gross or subtle. Srimad Bhagavatam 5.1.21 describes the abode of Brahma as being indescribable by the endeavour of mundane mind or words. In the terminology adapted in this book, this means that to describe such a loka adequately, we would have to make use of the higher dimensional concepts that cannot be grasped by our present minds and senses. At the very least, this implies that our ordinary concepts of space and time might break down when applied to this region of the universe. An interesting indication of the form this breakdown might take is given in the following story of Bhagavatam. Taking his own daughter, Ravati, Kukadmi went to Lord Brahma in Brahmaloka, which is transcendental to the three modes of material nature, and inquired about a husband for her. When Kukadmi arrived there, Lord Brahma was engaged in hearing musical performances by the Gandharvas, and had not a moment to talk with him. Therefore Kukadmi waited, and at the end of the musical performances he submitted his long-standing desire. After hearing his words, Lord Brahma, who is most powerful, laughed loudly and said to Kukadmi, O king, all those whom you may have decided within the core of your heart to accept as your son-in-law have passed away in the course of time. 27 Chatyur-yugas have already passed. Those upon whom you may have decided are now gone, and so are their sons, grandsons, and other descendants. You cannot even hear about their names. Srimad Bhagavatam 9.3.29-32. Here we see that when one visits such a loka, one experiences a transformation of time reminiscent of the time dilation of Einstein's theory of relativity. King Kukudmi and his daughter were evidently advanced yogis who were able to travel to such a loka by non-mechanical means. Although for them the trip took only a short time, when they returned to the earth they found out that millions of years had passed. We may then ask, did the distance that they travelled seem like 2 billion miles to them? If so, then it might also be that from our perspective the distance was billions and billions of miles. Although this is merely a conjecture, it does indicate some of the things that are possible in a universe that is ultimately inconceivable by our mundane minds. So yeah, you can see there's a difference in the travelling to higher dimensions and to the spiritual world itself, and how that affects time and space as well. Yeah, I probably just covered quite a lot. I don't know if there's more to go through. Obviously the main thing is that it gives an accurate conception of the universe in relation to divine providence, or governments by the Lord's will, which means that spiritual government reigns over the entire universe. So even if someone is not aware of spiritual law, he is still subject to those rules of spiritual law. And this is called divine providence, or government by the Lord's divine omnipotence. So that's very comforting for someone who is spiritual. And yeah, obviously you have things like the law of karma, which you may have heard of. So that's the most obvious one, of where there's some kind of cause and effect, causality. Also, Swedenborg describes lots of other things in his book Divine Providence, which is a lot about the divine government and how everything is under that spiritual law. So yeah, I think we should take a break, and I don't know, could come back and I could do some reading from Divine Providence or something and understand how that kind of works and how that ties in with the cosmology. But we'll take a break. I don't know if that. Sorry if I kind of went through that really quickly. I hope you you kept up and you got something out of it. I suppose the main point, my focus would, well, cosmology is very important for a worldview, but also specifically in relation to how it can help one actually develop their consciousness and go through those different stages of development, or chakras, and go through these things. But you're also understanding your cosmology in relation to geographic locations around you, and understanding where the Earth is and how everything operates. And so yeah, there's lots of cosmology is also really interesting in that regard. So I'll just do another little bit of chanting, and then yeah, I hope you've got something out of this, and check out those videos. Check out the Vedic Cosmology video, the one I think it's made in the 80s is the best one, and the lecture by Richard.L.Thompson is really good. And also, if you look at the Vedic Planetarium and see the actual temple that they're building in Mayapur that has this cosmology in it, so and that's under construction, so that's really exciting. You can see what's happening there. Cool. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Cool, thank you.